it's one thing to have a team, and you can't have a good business without a team, but those individual athletes where it kind of is all about you and what you're putting into it, it's where I kind of find that blend of like the personal and the business goal. You're never going to get anywhere without your team.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you got to work on yourself before you can contribute to anyone else.
All right, welcome back to Dope Conversations with Dave Carroll and Friends. And today we're going to be talking about MMA. And you just told me right before we started that like you're basically watching every event last 5 years. You're heavy into it. You believe there's like a phenomenon, at least at how it relates to business. Yeah. And it's like, let's hit that.
So when you look at like, I get just being like an MMA guy, it's hard for me to get into other sports because MMA is so like, it's on this night, it's my Saturday, it's my thing, whether it's a pay-per-view or it's a whatever. Like, I got kicked out of my fantasy football league finally for like not updating my teams. Like, I'll pay to play every year, but I'm the jerk in fantasy football. I used to be before I got the boot. MMA to me, what I love about it, it's the true display of what the output of hard work means. Yep. You might have found like Sugar, we were just talking about. Sugar's a dude, for those of you that aren't like MMA, the dude with all like the wild colored hair and just it's champion right now. Yeah. The work that dude put in that no one saw that makes it seem like to I don't want to say like fair weathered MMA fan, but just someone who like knows the popular people right now or whatever. It looks like he's a overnight success. But that overnight success took fucking 20 years. And I think that with what I relate to is the background with like fighters fighting, not necessarily just the physical, like the violence of it, but just like why someone gets into fighting, what fighting means, like the work that goes into it, the constant training, the discipline, but then the output can't happen overnight. You can't decide you're going to be a fighter yesterday and be world champion in a year or in 2 years. That shit could take a decade. It could take longer. And there's a lot of stuff that goes along with it. There's the training, there's your camp, there's the UFC, your relationships, the work, like all of it. And for me, it's like, I get really into the stories of some of these men and women. Who doesn't love an underdog, adversity, grindy, gritty, like all of that stuff. But then you go to someone like John Jones, who was like, some people just have natural talent in life. Yeah. And if you hear some of the stories about John Jones, when he was on his tear, I'm talking about a couple of years ago, John, if I ever meet you in life, I love you. I never mean to talk anything negative, whatever. But I've read stuff where it's like, this dude was up fucking staying up all night the night before, doing blow, partying, going to the fight and fucking demolishing someone. And something about that speaks to me, not in the being crazy and just whatever, but it's more like, that you're that good. Like you've put yourself in a spot, and it's one thing to be like a fuck off, which again, John is. He's gotten in trouble. He's done the things, whatever. And I admire that. His openness about it, the communicating. But you go to the other side of it where like that dude is just a fucking savage. Yeah. Like just a straight up fucking savage and knows what he is, knows what he's about, knows what he's good at, and has the hard work, the discipline, the training to be a fucking champion. Yeah. So it's almost like embracing the bad to have the good come out of it.
I mean, like at the very beginning when you were talking about, you mentioned training a bunch of times. Yeah. No one sees the training. You see it in the montage leading up to the fight and all that other stuff. But the training, I think that speaks to you. And the reason it came up so much is because no one wants to do the training.
No one.
People want to get locked in the ring with another dude and go just ham. But like no one wants to do the training. All those people, like there's no one that says, I love that. Maybe you learn to love it because it's required. But it doesn't mean you wake up and are like, I cannot wait to go just like pound the mat or go run 10 miles before whatever.
Of course.
And I think that speaks to you because like in entrepreneurship, you don't get to 7 figures or 2 7-figure companies or however many and living the kind of life you did, without that training that no one's going to see.
It's part of what makes entrepreneurship so lonely because at times it feels like you're the only one going through it and no one else is going through it with you and you don't really know the outlets. That's why it's so easy to go to these like meetups and masterminds and things like this. And you ever find like you meet someone that you've talked to a little bit on the internet, but then you meet them in person and you're like closer than people you've known your whole life. Like we all have those stories. Yeah. It's because like we can relate to being into something together. No one sees it. The hard work, the late nights, the finances, arguing with your spouse, not wanting to throw the ball with your kid, but knowing that it's the right thing, like all of those things. And I think for me, that's where I really relate it back to the training of a fighter. I just got into the movie Creed, like the series. Dude, like it was legit. I didn't finish the third one because I wanted Sly to be in it. But like that story of even a guy that came with more like the silver spoon or the heat he was getting through the first and the second movie about had all the things and then the mom adopted him. But in his mind, he was like in foster care. He was fighting. Not everyone knows your journey or what you've been through. And at times that can make it feel like a really lonely place. It just has always really spoke to me. The mentality of whatever you're doing, it might suck and it might be hard, but finding the joy. I call it, like one of my trainers, Chris, talk about like the pain cave. Like I'm kind of a fucked up dude. Like I like going to a place where it hurts. I like going to a place where I can like therapeutically get through. And for me, I found it in running. I found it in training where it's just like, you had brought it up in a previous episode with like Jesse, where it's just like, dude, this is supposed to be hard. Finally, I fucking feel this. But at the same time, like I just respect so much those sports or athletes. It's one thing to have a team and you can't have a good business without a team. But those individual athlete sports where it kind of is all about you and what you're putting into it, it's where I kind of find that blend of like the personal and the business goal. Cause like you're never going to get anywhere without your team. But at the same time, like you got to work on yourself before you can contribute to anyone else.
When it comes to UFC fighters, I would almost be willing to bet a kidney that none of them start fighting and don't desire to be a champion, right? Like you don't just get in it to just like fight. You don't even get it in it to just become rich, although that could be a byproduct if you're one of the big ones. But you get in it because you want to be a champion. What is the equivalent to that in the entrepreneurship world as we get ready to close here?
Great
like
question.
what's the parallel there? If like what should your me being a champion be?
One thing that I challenge everyone to do, listening, watching, getting exposed to this at whatever time or part of your journey, you got to define what success is for you. Because I promise you, you'll hear this from anyone that like made it in your industry, in your vertical or whatever. It's not that check. It's not the money. If anything, let's say you sell your business at the end of being an entrepreneur. There's a whole group of people that can relate to how like lonely that is. They don't have purpose. They go to like trying to find this whatever because they didn't really have a reason they were doing it the whole time. And I'm not saying anyone has to have that figured out right now. But when you go back to like, why are you doing what you're doing? Is it because you want to spend more time with your kids? Is it because you want financial independence? Is it because you want to inspire and lead people? Or you're really interested in changing the way something is done? The check is never going to make you whole. And anyone that's got one will tell you that. Big exit, small exit, working it your whole life. It's why you go back to the cliche, like find what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. What if you love to hang out with your kids and take them to school every day and then go train and pick them up at the end of the day? Well, then your job is to figure out the things that you have to do that make that possible.
100%.
That's your why. And so like, I can speak from a spot right now where like, we're looking at investors, like acquisitions, raising money, like that type of stuff. And you just start asking yourself some really serious questions. One fascinating thing I was talking to Jesse about this the other week was like, what's the difference between 10 million, 25 million, 50 million, 100 million, a billion? Dude, it's your ego. Like you talk to a financial advisor. There's an amount of money that's under $20 million that you get in your life and your kid's life will be fine. So what are you going for after that? You got to ask yourself that shit. And there's different lifestyle choices. There's different things that happen. But success, again, everyone that's listening, watching has heard this. Success isn't the money, but you got to define what a win is for you. Because to a fighter, it is that. Everyone gets in it, or the majority, to be a champion. That's not the same with business. Wherever you are in your journey in business, what I would challenge everyone to ask themselves, why did you start doing what you're doing? And what would it look like if you could get out of what you're doing today? Would you be happy? Would you be content right now? Everyone's got their number. If someone wrote you a check with that number today, would you be happy? I promise you the answer is no.
So we talked about resilience with UFC fighters. So John Jones is a perfect example. Had adversity back in the day, became a champion, was crushing people. And then we could arguably say hit rock bottom more than once.
Sure, publicly.
And then now he's back in the grind, crushing. We're going to talk about low parts of your business life and where resilience had to come into play.